Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici, welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel, and the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. Today I got a special pen. It is a special pen to introduce to you. A little bit of controversy, a little bit of confusion surrounding this pen. As you know, I have already published a review of the HONGDIAN Dynasty series Han, the D6 with the 18 karat gold nib, which I'm not sure is still available these days. It may still be available, but last I checked it was basically sold out, but I could be wrong. There you could find it somewhere. Having said that, everyone was waiting with anticipation as to whether or not HONGDIAN would actually come out with a steel nib version. Now, I do have a steel nib version to show you, and that's the objective of this video. And I'll explain, is this an HONGDIAN, or is this been manufactured by somebody else? Is it exactly the same as the HONGDIAN Han D6? Yes or no? Those are all questions that I hope to explore with you. So without any further ado, Fountain Pen Therapy presents, and I got to be careful here, the HONGDIAN Dynasty series Han D6, or something like that. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back. Just some background here. I'm going to show you the pen, the steel nib version, and we'll compare it to the 18 karat gold version. And you know, I've been trying to find some information on what exactly happened with this pen and how was it commissioned, etc., etc. And the only real source that I have for you, and let me just go to my computer here, is that Shanghai Knife Dude, our Chinese comrade, did post at one point or another a post. Comrade, here is a new but not in a way we are familiar with. Here is HONGDIAN factory announcement. HONGDIAN D6 An is an independent official HONGDIAN product. The recent authorization only covers nib components, not the complete pen. The upcoming pen under another brand is separate from the D6 Han series. And Shanghai goes on to show us a picture of the pen along with an explanation, and it's too bad I cannot get you to see the entire for some reason on my phone. I click it and I get the entire. This is kind of a translation. HONGDIAN kind of put a announcement out saying, look, we We authorized this other brand. The authorization was limited to the nib and the nib component and nothing else. So we are not behind this steel nibbed version. We stick to our guns. We didn't want to produce. We didn't want to release a steel nibbed version, and certainly this is not ours. So if you have any problems, contact the brand. And they go on to attach the certificate of authorization that they authorized the brand for the nib component. There is a translation that's provided there as well. So my understanding, and even the announcement, it's a translation. It's not quite clear. Did they farm out the production of a steel nib version to this brand company, and then weren't satisfied with the results, and then decided to say, no, we're not going to release it? Because there's some mention of that. Or did they just authorize this brand to use the nib, and the other brand proceeded to produce another pen with all its differences? It's not quite clear. But one thing's for sure, based on this research that I've done, is that this is not an HONGDIAN branded product. It is the company, the Chinese company that is announced this or put out this pen is Xiyun, Xiyun. That's all we know. So that's a little bit of background. So if you think you're getting a HONGDIAN branded product, it's not quite that, but you may be getting a nib that's been authorized by HONGDIAN. We shall see. We shall see. So why don't we take a look at the products themselves? Because after all, it's the pen that really counts, doesn't it? So we'll go to my overhead camera and show you that. Okay, so let me just put everything aside here. Here are the two boxes. So far, they are identical. Now, I don't read Chinese. I don't know what this stands for. But so far, same thing. You've got a cardboard sleeve with a wooden box. Now, if we turn it around, that's where we start to see some differences. Although the look is the same, the main difference is here. You can see right here, instead of having HONGDIAN, it's LT Xiyun. Whereas here we see HONGDIAN. The same thing you will see here, LT Xiyun, and here you have HONGDIAN. The rest is pretty much similar in terms of anything that's in English in any event, right down to the reminder here. They're very similar, very, very similar looking inscriptions here. What they all say at the end of the day, I'm not quite sure, because most of it is in Chinese. So this is the original gold, and this is the steel. Let's remove the plastic, the cardboard covers, if you will. Same kind of box. In fact, to me, it's identical. The only difference, and I apologize because the lighting is different. Here, this is the steel LT Xiyun, and this is I'm not sure what that is, but that may stand for HONGDIAN. I'm not sure. Now, when we open the original, I should turn it around. Here's what we get. Now, I got it. They were both in a kind of a plastic sleeve, if you will. There is a booklet. Not sure what this is all about, but that's what it was. And I had these two things that to this day, I can't figure out what they are. Was it to keep the pen there, but then you can't close the lid? I found it loose, okay, like this, and I've left it there. There was a little tag that came with it that says D6 18 karat. The pen is slotted there. You get this is what you get here. When you open this one, it's a little bit different. I find this touch a lot nicer, frankly, with the booklet. Here's the pen, and you get an ink from the same brand with this again, which I'm not sure what this serves, but essentially you're looking at exactly the same box. There you have it. Okay, so we will take out the pens. Now both booklets are basically all, apart from some of the manual, the instructions on how to fill it, etc., which are both in Chinese and English. The booklet is all really the booklets are all really in Chinese. Okay, you can take a look at my original video that will give you a little more in-depth look at that dynasty, the Han Dynasty, and all the decorative engravings on the pens and what they stand for and all the symbolism. I'm not gonna do that in this video. I'll let you guys do that if you so wish. I just really want to compare physically the two pens. So let's take a look at the two pens, will you? Give me a second. We're going to switch to a more close-up. Okay, we're going to have to do it this side. Okay, so again, just so we're clear, this is the 18 karat, this is the steel version. First thing that you'll notice is that the steel version is slightly longer than the gold. The general idea is the same. We've got piston fillers here with unique piston knobs, which are very similar, I would say to you. The gold one is slightly bigger, but not by much. The rest of the pen, in terms of general idea, you basically have this red portion of the pen with gold trimmings all over the place. The clip is kind of a sword. The finials are important. There's all kinds of symbolism on the finial. The difference being is that on the steel version, you have a lot less gold trimmings on the cap and more gold trimmings on the barrel. And the opposite is seen in the gold version. A lot more red here, as you can see, and a little more gold trimmings on the cap. So you kind of a reverse situation. This trimming here is smaller. This one's slightly larger. On the gold version, you see this middle portion right there. Let me just make sure my camera cooperates. Just give me a second here. Okay. This middle portion here, right here, is in fact the ink window to the gold version. We don't see anything capped. There is an ink window, but it's hidden in the steel version. Okay. In terms of the finials are very different in the pens. One is more of a flat version. The other one has got very elaborate engravings. Maybe this is preventing the 1 second. Okay, we're back. You can see the finials are very different. One's got very elaborate engravings. The other one is kind of got some engraving, but it's kind of a flat finial. You could see the top of the clip. The engraving, the elaborate trimmings are very different. Okay, lot simpler on the steel version, a little more elaborate on the gold version. The clip is essentially very similar. As you can see there, it's got that sword motif. And then you can see the difference in terms of a lot more gold trimming on the gold version than there is on the steel version in terms of the cap. Even the center band on the steel, it's got more red here. You've got more gold here. And the opposite applies to the barrel. On the steel version, you've got a lot more gold trimmings that go all around. And on the gold version, there's a lot more red. And again, I don't know what that material is. It's kind of we'll call it resin, just for the sake of argument, okay? The motif of, the decorative motif in the red resin portion are also different. You can see the bottom band here. One is larger than the other. This is the steel, this being the gold. Okay, so you can see some very interesting differences. Now, it could be that those differences are explained by the fact that they did not have full authorization in terms of reproducing the pen, so they just stuck to so they decided to make it a little bit different. Again, close-ups will show you the differences. If we turn it, it's basically you've got the same basic design here with a lot more resin than you have, trimmings, steel with metal gold trimmings. The opposite is true for the steel version, as you can see, more metal there. Still very elaborate pens, both are. I think the decorative engravings on the pistons are very similar. There may be some differences in terms of what exactly they're depicting, and the symbolism of the depiction is a little bit different. I can sense here that the drawing here or whatever is being depicted is a little bit different from here. I spare you all the details. Okay, so there you have it. Both pistons work really nicely. And now let's see how many turns. This is the steel version. Basically one for the steel, and 1.5 for the gold. So the steel. Now, one thing is for sure: if you don't screw it in properly, everything kind of gets. You have to line it up this way. From what I can figure, this is the way it lines up. And then if you screw it in, it will land in a sort of measured alignment, but it's not always the greatest. It's not always sharp. But you know what? The same can be said about the gold. It never really lines up. You've got to figure out the trick because you can get it misaligned. As you can see there, there's some logic to it, but it's not perfect in both pens. Let's remove the cap, will you? For the time being. Here we go. And we'll take a look at each portion of that cap inside. If we take my lighter, they're essentially equivalent. They're pretty much alike in terms of what I see. Okay, the screwing mechanism at the top, one begins a little further down and the other one doesn't. That explains why you see the ink window in one but you don't in the other. But other than that, we're talking about basically the same kind of concept. Okay, that's for the cap. Now let's take a look at the pen. First thing you'll notice is that the steel version, the section is a lot shorter than it is on the gold. The gold goes right up here, and the ink window is a little bit on top, thus exposing it once it's capped. Whereas the ink window here is really lodged into the cap. So there's the design difference. In other words, everything is kind of brought one shifted shorter, making the section a little bit shorter. But if you include the ink window and the screwing and the threads, they're essentially the same here. Okay, the nibs are interesting in both. The engravings, now I can't tell whether they're very different in terms of, yeah, there is a different design that's engraved on both of those nibs. Sorry, the lighting is not perfect, so they are different. But what I noticed, apart from the fact that one is 18 karat and the other one is steel, is the tipping. I don't know if you can see that, but the tipping on the gold version has a little more Naggiata look than I think I need to, I don't know if I could get it to focus a little bit better. Apologize, for some reason my camera is not cooperating. Let me just see if I could. Now the camera is getting, yeah, I don't know if you can see it here, but the tipping there is a little more fude, and it's got a little turn twist to it, a little more Naggiata, whereas it's a little bit more, I would say to you, kind of standard on the steel version. And again, I apologize, my camera is just not cooperating as much as I would want it to. But there you have it. In terms of the feeds, to me, they're exactly the same. And especially if they got it from HONGDIAN, then you can see they're HONGDIAN looking feeds in any event in both instances. The engraving on the sections are similar, but there are differences. And again, there's all kinds of symbolism in those engravings that I'm going to spare you. But there you have it. I think the ink window probably in the gold is a little more, well, I can't say that. There's this kind of cloud look here. I'm not sure that either one of them are great ink windows. I guess that when they're empty, you'll be able to see it right through it, and that's, I think, what's important. Right now, you don't see anything because both pens are inked. Okay. In terms of capping, let me just expand that for you. Now, I want to make sure I get this right. This is the gold. Oh, this is the gold. You can see how it caps right there neatly. Okay. That's the steel. I'm sorry. This is the gold. So the gold doesn't cap as nicely, I would say to you, as the steel. The steel kind of goes down nicely, and I would say to you probably doesn't activate that, or there's less danger of activating the piston knob on the steel version than there is on the gold version, just because here it sits right on that cap, on that piston cap. So better posting, I think, on the steel one. In both cases, the posting becomes ridiculous, back-weighted. I do not recommend that you write with this pen posted, but it can't be posted. It's just that it is very, very long and very, very heavy, as you can imagine, in both cases. So there lies a comparison. I mean, there is the differences between both pens. The real question is, how do these nibs write, and how does one compare to the other? I think they're both gorgeous pens. Now, I know these pens are a little over the top, but, they're kind of Montegrappa style pens. Montegrappa does a lot of pens that are this elaborate and this over the top, and it's not for everybody. And not, it's not unanimous. Some people say there's no way I'm going to write with a pen that looks like that. And others will say, wow, it's a real piece. It's more, I think, a piece of art than it is a pen. But I can assure you that the nib on the gold version is just superb. One of the best writing experiences that I've had with a nib. So nothing to shy away from there, and we shall see what the steel nib does for us. Again, you can see depending on how you screw in the pen, everything kind of gets off. Nothing aligns. I thought I'd found the secret, and the secret was to make sure your nib, you choose that part, and then you screw it, and you should land on that part. There you go. From what I can tell, it's the metal that should go lined up with based on the pictures. And then if you do that, there's a little bit of, the alignment is not perfect. So, but that applies, I think, to both pens. As you can see, the alignment in the gold is not perfect either. If I start this way, it's offline. It's kind of hit and miss. And I know that some of you are better than I am at these things, but I don't make a big deal about those. But again, I wanted to show you that one is not any better than the other. There you go. In terms of what the pens look like, we will we'll compare them to some other pens, if you will, and then we'll take some measurements. And the most important part, I think, is we're going to compare those nibs. Be right back. Okay, in terms of comparison, pen and size comparisons, here are the two pens, the steel and the gold. This is the N25 from HONGDIAN, so you can see that the N25 is, it's got a different shape because one is a little more cigar-shaped than the other, but similar size when you take into consideration the decorative finials. This is the Pelikan M1000, which is a big pen, and as you could see, it is almost the same length. It is almost the same, if not the same length as the HONGDIAN D5. This is the 100, which is a little bit shorter. And these are two HONGDIAN celebrating 2024 with the dragon motifs. Again, you can see similar, this resin part. You can see it here in the N25 as well. But again, all very elaborate. The Chinese ones, all very elaborate pens, and I wanted to show you the differences. Those are the pens capped. Here are the pens uncapped. And of course, my M1000 is the biggest one of them all, just with that big, huge nib, Pelikan nib here on the M1000 makes all the difference, of course. But in terms of the other pens, you're talking roughly, except for the 100 and the smaller sized dragon pen here, you can see they're all basically the same size. The nibs are, in terms of decorative styles and shapes, very, very similar. All of these are, with different, engravings on each, but very elaborate and very nice nibs indeed. But those are the pens uncapped and unposted. I'm not going to show the pens posted simply because the subject pen really should not be posted. It becomes ridiculously long and extremely back-weighted and not recommended in my view. So there you have the pen and size comparison. We're going to do some measurements and then the writing samples. Now, for the writing sample, first of all, in both of these pens, I have Iroshizuku Yamabudo, so great performing ink. I'd like to compare it also to the D5. This is the D5 with the very springy fine nib. On this green version, this was my first one, I was convinced I had a gold nib. It was so soft. So I'm just wondering whether or not the steel D6 has the same feel as my D5. I think the chances are it'd be very different from my HONGDIAN D6, the gold version, just because the tips of both those nibs are very, very different. So those are the pens that I'd like to explore with you. But before we do a comparison, let's just have the subject pen right on its own, if you will. Okay. So there you have it. So this is and again, I want to get the name right because, and even the D6, I'm not sure actually forms part of the official title of, or, branding of that pen. And I keep getting it wrong. From what I see on the box, it's the LT Z Yun. Now others have added, Han for the dynasty and the D6. Now, does that officially form part of the title of this pen? I'm not sure. The Han D6 could be in some of the Chinese engravings or writings on these branded materials. I'm not sure. But, so there you have that. Okay, so the nib is, again, here I would have to say it's a HONGDIAN authorized anyway. Number 6 steel, and this is a fine. Now just one second. There does not appear to be any, yes, there is a fine. Actually, HONGDIAN, and the camera's not cooperating, but HONGDIAN is written right on the nib at the bottom here, HONGDIAN F. So as you can see, it is an HONGDIAN number 6 steel fine nib. The ink is Iro Shizuku Yamabudo. So let's first of all, smoothness. Extremely smooth. Barely any real feedback. The wetness, very, very wet, especially for a fine nib, as you can see. Bounce, yeah, it's got soft, bouncy feeling, not a flexy. Now, can I get some line variation? Again, I'm not good at the S here, but you don't really get line variation by pushing it, but it is soft. You can see that nib giving, it's like shock absorbers, if you will. Fast writing, so flow, or the consistency of the flow is just excellent. No problems there. Really no problems at all with the flow. Reverse writing, yeah, you can get away with it, and it writes not even scratchy, but you're getting an extra fine line, I would say to you. Very, very faint. So there you have it in terms of the major features here. Now, what are the likes and dislikes. I mean, let's start off with the obvious dislike. Is just that, is this a copy? Is this authorized? Is this an inspired design? It doesn't appear to be an HONGDIAN authorized pen, so what is it, But having said that, the design is nice. The materials make the pen. The build quality, from what I can see, is nice. Now, I know some of you complained about, at least we could see that, let me just get the gold version, that they were a little bit disappointed with the way the painting, the red lacquer here kind of overlapped on the gold trimmings, and it wasn't perfect. Wow, I got to tell you, I'm not that picky, and picky may not be the wrong word, but if you're going to pay $300-400 for the pen, I guess you want it to be perfect. So there was some dripping of the lacquer. You could see it here onto the gold trimming. Do I see that here? I think what they did is the lacquered version, or the resin, is kind of snugly into the gold trimming, so I don't see any overlap that I see on the gold version. It's actually a little more perfect on the steel than it is on the gold version, if you will. And it could be just the function of the way they've decided to design the gold metal trimmings and the resin. So there you have that. But the build quality is excellent. The value is also very good, in my view. Now, do I have the gold? No, I have the gold version here. I got to be careful. Okay, let's go back to my steel version. Well, before we get to value, there's an ink window, so that's nice. And it could also be a dislike, not the greatest ink window, if you will. Okay, you wonder whether or not it serves a purpose, but it's there. You can see it. They've got holes, and I imagine if your pen is empty, you'll see it a lot better. Ink window. The value, now here's where it's a little tricky, depending on whether you order this pen on Taobao or AliExpress. On AliExpress, including shipping, it's being sold at $150. On Taobao, it's being sold for $72. These are both Canadian, so half the price, but you got to add shipping. And I've seen shipping, being as expensive as $60. The trick with Taobao is that you try to consolidate various products, put them all in the same box, so you save on the shipping. So it may end up costing you quite a bit cheaper than the $150. Now let me just make sure that the AliExpress one is indeed including shipping. Just bear with me, folks. Free shipping. Yeah, the $150 is including shipping. Okay. Either way, I think it's a great value. I really enjoy both pens. I really like this one as well. It has its differences, and it writes just beautifully. So if you're into these pens, in terms of how elaborate they can be, it's a great, it's a piece of art, essentially. Okay. Now, next thing I want to do is let's compare how they compare with the gold. Okay. So we'll do the comparison here. Well, before we do the gold, let's compare it to the D5. So we'll call this comparison. This is the HONGDIAN D5 with the fine nib. And I think the HONGDIAN has more bounce. A lot more bounce. Does it have line variation? Not really. The same thing. But it's got more bounce as compared. And again, let me just compare again. This is the just a little stiffer. A little more rigid than the D5, but very comparable. Okay. Now, when we compare it to the gold, so this is the HONGDIAN, and you can see the tip right there. Whoop. Oh, maybe I have no more ink. That's embarrassing. 1 second, let me just make sure it has ink. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Let's scratch that out. There was a little bit of crusty red ink on the tip there, so it's a completely different writing experience. As you can see, the line is a lot thicker. This is the HONGDIAN 18K D6. So it's a thicker line. I mean, it's got a Nagiata sort of a nib, so it's a lot wetter and much bounce. It's bouncier than, I would say, bouncier more than the D5 and the Ixi Yun one. So softer, sorry about that. It's softer, wider line, thicker, smoother, and wetter than the other two. So there is a big difference in my view. This is a pen that kind of gets away from you. A little bit like the Pelikan M1000. It is so juicy. I mean, look at this. This is supposed to be a fine, but it's certainly writing like a medium. A very wet and thick medium at that. So in terms of writing experience, it all depends on what you like. If you like a pen or a nib that has a little more feedback and a little more precise with some bounce, then the other two does the trick. If you want a little more bounce with precise line, you go for the D5, a little bit less with that Ixi Yun nib. But we're really being very detailed here. The big differences between the gold and the two steel nibs, that's for sure. So there you have it. I hope I kind of provided you with some insight into this mystery pen, to the extent that we don't know what happened here. At the end of the day, why, the first question I had is why didn't HONGDIAN come up with the steel nib version? I suspected that maybe, I've heard rumors that HONGDIAN is no longer around, that they may have kind of stopped their operations. I'm not sure how true that is. And so I said, well, that will explain it. And they may have just been asked by another company, can we produce for you, or can we produce the steel? And they may have said, look, we'll give you permission to do the nib. And I don't know how that permission worked. It's still not quite clear. One thing for sure, the nib is branded HONGDIAN, but they have not taken credit for the pen itself. So there you have it. And I'm showing the wrong one. This should be the one that should be there. That's the steel version. So there you have it. It's a completely different pen in my view. Very similar in terms of design and the use of gold trimmings and that red and with all the elaborate trimmings and etc. But they are different, including the nib, no doubt. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. I still think it's a pen worthy of mention and worthy of purchase. Beautiful writing experience, got a very nice nib. Look, the nib on the D5 and the nib on this new LT Xiyun D6, the steel D6, are exceptional. They're gold-like in terms of writing experience. We're not talking about a Bach nib or a Schmidt nib or a Yowo nib, fine nib. There's no comparison. It is HONGDIAN-like, if you know what I mean. So if you like that HONGDIAN nib experience, you will not be disappointed with this pen. It does go for $150, which is not a $50 Asvine price or a $60 Asvine price, but some of the Asvines are a little more expensive depending on, and it is an elaborate design, and there's a lot that goes into a pen like this, and it is a piece of art in my view. I think it's worth $150, and I certainly would spend $150 if I had it. But everyone has their priorities and their likes and dislikes. So there you have it. But it's a pen that I would recommend at the end of the day. Okay? So there you have it. I'm glad that you joined me to see this. We've got lots of pens coming on this channel. One at a time. We will get them all done. I'm working very hard to produce all the videos so that maybe at one point I may have to produce or publish 2 per week. But look, we shall see. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And, if you like this kind of content, please give a thumbs up, alert, ring the bell, do what you need to do, and please subscribe. It helps the algorithm and it helps the channel, if you will. Okay? Thank you very much. Enjoy your pens, your paper, and your inks. Lots of fountain pen therapy for all of you. Take care, folks.